Hey, how's it going? This is Seth Williams, retipster.com. And today I want to take you through the process of selling a property through this website called Safe Funds. So I've actually heard about Safe Funds for many years now, and I've heard positive reviews from other people who have used them, but I've not used it myself yet. So just to be totally clear, this is not an endorsement of this site or a sponsorship or anything like that. I'm just making this video because in the past, when I've thought about using this website, it just wasn't abundantly clear to me exactly how it worked, even though they do explain it very clearly on the website. It felt like I could have used an example of somebody walking me through how a deal works like this. So I just figured I would take this one transaction that I'm doing and actually walk you through the process on this website myself for the first time. So I'm not an expert at this. I'm just making this for anybody else out there who's curious about how it works. And it's also worth mentioning, this is not just for real estate transactions. It's for apparently any kind of major transaction where you need some kind of a third-party intermediary to sort of act as an escrow agent. And that's really the function that this website serves. In most real estate transactions, people would be using like a title company or an escrow office or a real estate attorney to be that escrow agent for them. But when you're working with a deal like the one I'm working on, where it's a relatively cheap property and a title company, I mean, they would certainly do a good job, but they would take a lot longer and we'd have to pay extra costs for closing. And for what this deal is, it's a very simple signing a deed and sending it in and we're done. So there's not a whole lot to it. And if you're doing something like that or some other kind of major transaction where the two parties don't necessarily know each other or trust one person to just send a whole ton of money to them and trust the other party to deliver the goods or the services or whatever it is that they're paying for, that's when something like Safe Funds, I think, could be useful, because a person can send their money to Safe Funds and then Safe Funds can say, yep, we got the money, and the other party can perform their part. And once that's done, the person who sent in the money can release the funds. So that's kind of how it works. So to get started, if you don't already have a Safe Funds account, you have to start one. And really both parties in the transaction have to have an account. So as the seller, I'm going to go ahead and create an account right now, and I'll show you how this works. So we sign up right here. We'll say join now, and it says membership is absolutely free. We will not ask for any credit card or financial information. So that's all good. Go ahead and click continue. And I'll put in my name, company name, address, zip code, phone number, email address, country, and currency code, and add the information and click continue. Okay, now we have to add a public ID, which is used to log in and identify your transactions to trading partners. Then we also have to have a Safe Funds screen name to be displayed to other members. So in my case, I think both can be the same name. I'm gonna go ahead and just put that in here, then set a password, and then transaction security code used with your private ID to sign transactions. So I've got like a PIN number that I always use for this. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use that because I know I'm gonna remember it. And then the last 4 digits of your social security or it looks like I'm actually going to want to put the last 4 digits of my LLC's tax ID number here. So I'm going to go ahead and put that there, not my personal social security number. And then secret question number 1, go ahead and pick one of those. And then another one. Okay, I will check that I have read and agree to the terms of service. Go ahead and add this here. All right, so now that I'm in here, I've never done a transaction at this point, so I need to create a new transaction for a trading partner right here. And if I had been in here and using this a lot, I could create or modify a prototype transaction for future use. So this is basically like if there's a lot of deals that I do with Safe Funds, like over and over again, where maybe there's like a similar fee structure or similar fields are filled out the same way every single time, I could sort of use that as a template and start with that, but I don't have any templates currently. So I'm just going to start from scratch and create a new transaction. In this case, so it's asking, are you the seller or the buyer? And I am the seller. And is the transaction for goods, services, or both? I guess, as a real estate deal, what would this be? I guess it'd be goods. And then enter public ID of your transaction partner. So I actually don't know what this is yet. So I need to ask them what their public ID is. And then that can be used to identify them. Originally, I thought I would just need their email address, but that's clearly not what they're asking for here. So I'm going to have to pause this and ask them what their public ID is and come back and pick this back up. Okay, now I'm back and I got that public ID. I sent the buyer an email and they responded pretty quickly. So I'm going to put that right in here. Click continue, And it says, note to new users, you will need your private ID and transaction security code to electronically sign this transaction at completion. Okay, that's fine. And it says, you are the seller. Be sure your role is correct before selecting continue. That is correct. Your trading partner is that person. I'm going to blur this out on the screen just for their privacy. So everything still looks good. Go ahead and click continue. And now I have to enter in the transaction details for this deal. So it says new, used, or not applicable. I'm going to say not applicable. Brand, model year, packaging, color fish. Looks like a lot of this stuff is referring to things like cars or boats or something else like that, which totally makes sense. I can see why this would be a very useful service for that kind of thing. It actually doesn't surprise me that they don't have things for real estate terminology specifically, because again, most people are closing through title companies and they wouldn't even bother using something like this for a piece of land. But I'm going to see if I can get through here and make sense of it. So let's see, sale terms. Sale is final. Warranty information. I'll put the type of deed I'm going to transfer to them. Special warranty deed. And then for description, I'll just put a basic description in here. And then for the details, I put the legal description in here. And then special conditions, none, amount. We're going to put $10,000 because that's the amount I'm selling it for. And then expected delivery service date. I'm going to put the closing deadline in here that we have in the purchase agreement. And there we go. Click continue. And everything looks good. Go ahead and accept this. And then we have to sign this transaction. So I'm going to put my private ID in here. Put that in here. And go ahead and click continue. Okay, so this is saying the time the transaction will appear in green as in reserve and the funds will appear as pending receipt in your account status. So at this point, I'm just waiting for that buyer to deposit the funds, and it's up to them to get that money in there. And as soon as that's in there, I can go ahead with completing my deed and getting that sent in for recording. So for now, I'm going to put this on hold and we'll pick this back up once we've seen some progress. Okay, so I'm back. Now, it's been a couple of weeks now since I hit pause, and now we actually have some progress to show. Now, part of the reason why this has taken so long is because the buyer in this transaction had a few different options for how they could send the money into safe funds to put it in escrow. They could either wire the money in, or they could use the bill pay option with their bank account if they have that, or they could mail in a cashier's check, certified or personal check to this address down here. And they chose to do this option down here at the bottom. When you do this option, it explains pretty clearly here that it takes 6 to 10 banking days after they receive the check. So that's what they did, and that's about how long it took for Safe Funds to get the money in registered here. So now that we have the money, I'm going to go up here and click on work with your active transactions, and we can see now that this changed to now green in reserve. So let's go ahead and check this thing and click continue. And at this point, what I need to do is actually perform my end of the deal, which is sending in the deed to be recorded at the county. And then once that is complete and they receive the recorded deed, then I can request for the funds to be released. So we're still not done, but we do have the money and we can see that it's in there, which is a very important step in this process. So now I'm going to go ahead and get this deed recorded. I'm going to push pause again and we'll pick this back up once this thing is finished. Okay, I'm back already. So this actually worked a lot faster than I thought it would. Luckily, this particular county works with Simplifile, which is an online electronic recording service that basically just allows you to send in documents to get recorded a whole lot faster than if you had to send them in through the mail. So it's only taken me like a couple hours and this thing is already recorded. So what I'm going to do at this point is get right back in here to my Safe Funds account and go here to this transaction, which I pretty much didn't have to move at all. And all I have to do is click on this button that says request funds be released. So I'm going to do that. And then your request for release of funds will be sent to the buyer. You may also send the buyer additional information by entering it below. This might include shipment tracking information or reference proof of delivery or completion of services, that kind of thing. So what I could do here is just enter in a short message like, hey, buyer, the deed has been recorded, but I can't like attach any proof of that here. So what I'm going to do is basically send the same message here and also in a separate email where I'm going to, basically let her know the same thing. And in this email, I'm going to attach a copy of the recorded deed just so she has that as proof that it's done. And then I will go ahead and send this request here on both platforms, both Safe Funds and email. So I'm going to make sure that attachment is included here in this email, and then I will basically copy and paste this exact same message into Safe Funds. Go back over here to Safe Funds, paste this in here. They only allow for 300 characters here. That's not a whole lot of space. So I might have to shorten this just a little bit. Alrighty. So go ahead and click continue. And something I'm probably also going to do is just pick up the phone and give this person a call just to make sure that they got the good news and that they've heard from me. And as in any real estate transaction, that kind of communication is key, just to make sure like you guys know each other. You can pick up the phone and talk to each other or email. So I'm going to quick give her a call and make sure she got the message and give her the good news, and we can wrap this thing up. So I'm going to quick put this on pause one more time, and I'll come back once the funds have officially been released and we can see that that's complete. Okay, now this process is going surprisingly fast. I'm back here, and I had called the buyer just to let them know that everything was done. I sent them a copy of the recorded deed via email and let them know that everything was pretty much finished. And she got back into her Safe Funds account and released the funds. And I got this email here saying that the funds are available. So let's go check it out. Okay, let's go and check the account balance and funds activity. And there we go. We can see the transaction date. We can see the description of the property right there, the transaction amount, and the fees that they took out. So I had to pay $128 of that $10,000 that I received. And we can see the current balance right up here, $9,872 of that $10,000 sale price. So let's go back here and request a withdrawal from your accounts. Go ahead and click this. So I'm just going to put in the full amount that I have in here to completely withdraw it. And it says members may receive funds electronically or via wire transfer directly to their bank account or receive a check via U.S. mail. Checks cannot exceed $10,000. So I should be just within that limit. Let's go ahead and click continue here. And let's see, you may select a check request or select bank account maintenance to enter electronic funds transfer information for accounts in the U.S. And I'm just going to go with check request for the sake of simplicity here. Might take me a few more days, but shouldn't be too difficult. Put my business name and mailing address in there just the way I normally would. Click continue, then enter in this information, click continue. There we go. The request is complete, and we'll just wait a few days for this to get here. I'm going to pause this and pick it back up once that check arrives. And actually, as we're waiting here, there's a few things I think are probably just worth talking about, just so we kind of understand how this process works from the buyer's end. Because through this video, I'm just showing you my experience as the seller. There's a couple of things to be aware of if you are a buyer and you're trying to use Safe Funds, or if you're just curious about what your buyer is going to be seeing and experiencing at their end when they create their account and try to complete this transaction with you. And you also might be curious about the fees to use something like Safe Funds, like how much does it cost and who has to pay the fees, and is it cheaper than some other alternative? So let's go check that out. So it looks like this is always free for the buyer unless they somehow don't perform their end of the deal. But otherwise, assuming the transaction goes according to plan, the fees pretty much always come from the seller. So I'm having to pay these fees. And if I wanted to, I could have made the transaction price higher just to account for these fees if I wanted the buyer to effectively pay for them just by paying me a higher purchase price, assuming they're okay with that and everything. But as you can see, the fees are not too terrible. And it looks like there's some other optional fees as well. So like if the buyer is wiring their funds into Safe Funds, they're probably going to have to pay some kind of bank wire transfer fee. So there's some other stuff that can come into play, but even then, it's not too bad for what this is. And if we go back here to the Safe Funds homepage, we can click on how it works, just to see an overview of how it works, and they just explain it. We can read more detail, and it looks like they even have a diagram, which, just kind of visually portrays what's happening. So the seller creates a new transaction, and then the buyer can accept or even modify the transaction. And once both parties agree, then they move forward. And once the goods arrive and are examined by the buyer, in this case, it would be that deed. So they would verify that they've received the completed one and that it's all good to go. And if everything is as expected, they would get back into their Safe Funds account and release the funds to the seller from the in reserve account, and then the transaction is complete. And if there is some kind of a problem or delay, the buyer would initiate some kind of dispute, and the seller or buyer could negotiate a solution, or one of the parties can ask Safe Funds to arbitrate. And I'm not really sure what that entails or how deep that goes, or what happens if, say, there's a dispute that isn't resolved. Then what? I'm not really sure. So that, in my mind, is kind of a big question mark. But I have to imagine that in most cases, if two people are going to do business together, there's at least some kind of understanding. They've had a conversation ahead of time. Everybody's on the same page about what should be happening. And I think without knowing any more than I do, one of the possible drawbacks of Safe Funds is that there might not be that level of customer service that you would get from something like a title company or a closing attorney, where there is an individual responsible for this thing going well, and you can pick up the phone and talk to them. Maybe there's a way you can do that here with Safe Safe Funds. Yep, looks like there is a phone number down here, but even so, it's not like there's an individual closing agent who is ultimately responsible for pulling everything together and just being that face behind the deal to make sure it all happens. That's something that you would get from a title company that I'm not sure that you would get that from Safe Funds necessarily. So just wanted to sort of share those thoughts as we're waiting here. I'm going to push pause on this thing and we'll pick it back up once those funds are received and we can move forward. All right, guys, I'm back. So it's been 3 business days or 3 USPS mail days. It's actually a Saturday, and it was a Wednesday when I pushed pause. So I finally got it here. This is the envelope from Safe Funds. You can see it right there. I'm excited. You excited? Let's open this thing up and see what's in here. I think I have an idea, but let's just confirm. Open this thing. And lo and behold, we have a check for $9,872. You see that right there? I guess this confirms it. Safe Funds officially works. At least it worked for this transaction. I hope this was helpful, at least just to see a real life example of what the transaction process looks like for a land deal from the seller's side with a buyer who is very cooperative and good at communicating. So this is kind of like the best case scenario in terms of how it can go. Probably the only real holdup or, slow thing about this was just the fact that the buyer chose to mail in their check to Safe Funds. That just took basically a couple weeks for Safe Funds to officially show those funds so that I could then proceed. But once that was done, it was very quick for me to finish my steps. But yeah, just in terms of Safe Funds, it was really pretty smooth sailing. If you decide to use Safe Funds, I wish you all the best. Otherwise, best of luck working with your title company or trying to close it with a mobile notary or trying to work directly with the buyer or seller on your deal. That's all. Thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.